Hi, this is Pamela Parker, Research Director of the Content Studio at Third Door Media. And I'm here to remind you that the Search Engine Land Awards are now open for entries. So get your team recognized for the outstanding work they do in search marketing. Visit this link to enter today, and good luck.
Hi there, and welcome to our session. This is In Streaming Color, making CTV video creative for search marketers. So to kick things off, I'll introduce myself and my co-presenter here. My name is Lexi Tierney. I am the VP of Customer Success at QuickFrame, overseeing really all of our customer teams in our video production marketplace. And my lovely colleague here, I'll let introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks, Lexi. Excited to be here. So I am Alex Villa. I oversee the growth team at QuickFrame and focused on more so understanding current customers' business models, strategic opportunities for growth, and areas for additional video production.
That's right. So we're excited to be here today and speaking on this topic. So a few things that we'll cover in this session. First, just a little bit of insight into how brands and search marketers really can make that leap to CTV, and then it's not maybe as distant or hard as it may seem. We'll talk about developing some initial assets to test on CTV, as well as then optimizing and iterating on your CTV creative. And we'll go through an example of how a certain partner of ours has done this really well and the value they've seen from it. So hopefully some interesting content to talk through today. So touching on, again, what I mentioned at the top as far as making that initial leap to CTV, it's not as far as you may think. What we've found is that transition or application of some of the strategies from paid search over to CTV can be easier than you might have anticipated. A lot of the benefits of digital marketing apply and are consistent between search, social, and even on CTV. So if you have, and you already do have, a clear strategy that you're using for your search and or social efforts, there are a lot of synergies and similarities that you can apply to your CTV campaigns, or at least to start out in some CTV testing. And the similarities really kind of begin even just from an audience targeting standpoint. Setting up a new CTV campaign can be as simple as what you do for search and social, right? You're identifying your audience, whether it's demographics, psychographics, even keyword targeting. You're then uploading whatever creative or messaging you want to use, and then inputting details like when you want it to run, what your goals are, etc. So it's fairly similar, even though it seems like it might be some distant TV offering. It's often and can be a very similar process and not as hard to get started as you might think. If anything, the main difference, which may feel like a no-brainer, is that you do need that really high quality, living room quality CTV asset. That's probably the biggest challenge that marketers have, that we've found in making that leap, is making sure that you have the video assets to test and to get up and running. Fortunately, there are some solutions, including our own, to removing that barrier and making it easier to get new assets to test and run on connected television. The other nice benefit here is that by running CTV campaigns, you do see a lift often in the performance for your search efforts or your social efforts. There's kind of a halo effect that we talk about, where you have that big screen presence, and that translates nicely to more search volume or more engagement on your social channels. So there's a lot of benefit in running a cohesive campaign across all of these different platforms. And CTV happens to be catching your audience or your potential customer when they're really engaged in consuming and watching content. So it's a great introduction to your brand and to the message that you want to share. And that in turn does lead to higher conversion rates down funnel with something like paid search. So a lot of benefits from getting that quality asset in the mix. For some, we realize that you may not know exactly where to start. So often what Alex and I like to talk about with our customers is going back to the basics in some ways, really just answering the key questions of who are you trying to talk to, and where are they at in your sales funnel or sales cycle, right? What are the challenges that they're having? What are the problems that you're helping to solve for with your product or your service? And what other emotions might they be feeling because of their problems or challenges that they're having? That can help you really determine what sort of messaging you might want to share with them or what story you may want to tell. You can also kind of look at it in two parts, right? Depending on where they're at in their journey with your brand. If it's a more upper funnel initiative that you're running, you're prospecting, or you're just creating some initial awareness about your brand, that's a really good indication to use a why this company or why this brand story. You're explaining more of your value prop, more of who you are and what you stand for as a brand. If it's a little lower funnel and you're engaging with an audience that's already familiar, maybe they've either visited your website or have engaged with other content and campaigns of yours, that's when you're going to want to shift your message to a why now, right? What's the reason that they should be shopping from you or learning more about your offering today, and creating some urgency behind it. So again, sometimes even just those basics for marketing of going back and letting that guide what your CTV content should be is a great way to at least get the ball rolling. So with that, I will transition over to Alex to talk about what this can look like in a little more detail.
Thanks, Lexi. So building, I think, kind of on what Lexi was talking about, this really kind of harkens back to leveraging your expertise. You've already started to build up this search data. You have some baseline learnings that you can really easily make that jump from search to CTV with. And again, you definitely want to be leveraging what you've already learned and using that to kind of guide the direction that you're then going to take this creative for your CTV commercial. So as Lexi was saying, you might already know what that audience looks like when it comes to prospecting versus retargeting. Leverage that understanding of who you're talking to really outline, okay, what are the ways in which we can differentiate our messaging when it's someone that's still within that kind of exploratory phase. Maybe they've looked up some of those keywords versus, again, retargeting and trying to really drive that action. So this, when you think about creative and setting up the campaign, this kind of then translates to the kind of information that you would want to convey to a production studio. And the direction that you give is really going to hone in on the way in which you've thought about your search data in the past. So things that we want to know or understand better are, who are those target audiences? What are the personas of those target audiences? Are there nuances that would be helpful for us to understand in terms of the language, the keywords, the message that you've used in the past to kind of differentiate in the way that we're then going to try and go after these folks with the video concept that we bring to life? In line with that is also emotion. So this is a big one. And this is where, the creative can really range. So are we trying to tell a story that's happy, that's funny? Are we trying to be much more realistic or maybe prescriptive in what we're showing? That can relate to the difference of, an everyday scenario someone may experience. And then that's where your product or service comes into play versus the approach of maybe showing visuals that provide a better overview of how and when they can use your product or your service. So again, leveraging what you already know to help inform and guide the production and the direction we take the creative in is kind of how we want to think about these learnings that you already have. Alex, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So this kind of then lends us to the idea of wanting to be strategic with what we're testing. So with this initial creative asset that you're going to use, again, we're going to take the search data and the learnings you already have to kind of guide us and point us in the right direction. With using CTV as a new channel, there's going to be additional learnings that can be gained. So again, this is the jumping off point. The focus in terms of being strategic is really about honing in on, okay, what is it that we want to learn and then be able to action off of. So with the creative, a lot of the times we try and remind customers that it's important to stay focused in thinking about, okay, what is it that we're actually trying to learn? Or what is it that we're actually trying to drive that consumer to do that will help us then understand what's really driving that performance. And again, as you can see here too, at the end of the day, hopefully it then saves you time and money as well.
That's always the goal, right?
So yeah, and I think this notion that it's not a one and done, this is probably very applicable across every paid campaign that you run. So optimization, it's an ongoing process. Again, moving to a new channel, there's going to be new opportunities to continue to test and learn. And again, we'll be using that search data and that initial expertise you have to get us off the ground. But from there, we do want to figure out ways that we can continue to iterate, continue to fine tune the strategy. So this, again, relates to the fact that CTV may open up opportunities with targeting and the audiences you're reaching. There may be also additional ways within the creative that we can actually bring the visual component in. So we're providing that consumer with not only maybe the keywords that they're using to search and learn more about your product or service, but the visuals can kind of give them more of that full understanding of who the brand is, what they do, why they should be interested, or if it's more on the retargeting end, why they should be actioning on it now. And again, so as you continue to run those campaigns and get those learnings, that's where you can start to really hone in and fine tune that strategy. And then I think the biggest and most beneficial is you don't have to do it alone. So, in partnering with, say, Mountain and QuickFrame, the idea is that, if you can bring your expertise to the table in terms of what you already know from your search data, we are here as partners to then guide you and help you understand how you can translate that into creative that will hopefully then it will translate to the big screen. So like Lexi was saying, there's a lot that can be applicable from search to the living room TV that your consumer is watching. And as a production partner, QuickFrame, we've created hundreds of videos for brands that are in different industries, different business segments. So we know the nuances or the things to be mindful of when it comes to best practices specific to CTV as a channel. And so, we can really be here to provide those suggestions and recommendations so you're then set up for the best chance of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you called out, Alex, that I think is super important to just echo is that once you do get that initial asset or that initial story, that's only the beginning. And one thing I think search marketers do particularly well is test and iterate. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes here. So exactly like you said, let's see how this initial story or video lands, and then refine it and test new variations or test new messages so that you're just continually honing that CTV strategy. And driving even more performance down the road, right? That's the end goal. So
yeah. Yeah, I would say too, when working with a partner like QuickFrame, we'll be here learning alongside you. So as we start to see what that performance is, given the fact that we may have created that first video, we'll have a better understanding of the ways in which we can still leverage that existing creative to make those iterations. So again, it's really that partnership dynamic where we can kind of learn as we go together. But again, we've got the expertise on the production side and what works with CTV. And then you can kind of come in with, again, that expertise that you have from search, so that we can continue to find ways to drive that performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So this, I think, is a helpful rubric to share, just so you can see when we talk about kind of best practices and understanding how to translate those search data, the search learnings that you have to video creative. These are the components that we kind of look for across all partners. So items that maybe aren't as intuitive or something that you would immediately think of are things like sound. So if you're sitting in your living room watching a TV commercial, oftentimes I feel like personally for myself, when an ad comes on, I immediately go to pick up my phone, or I may run to the bathroom and come back. So the thing that is so important with sound is that you may be showing visually on screen your brand logo, your URL, but if I leave the room and then come back in, there's a chance I could miss that on screen. And so the benefit of adding in sound is that you're maximizing, again, the opportunity to ensure that even if the person doesn't necessarily see it, they hear it. And so, you're really driving home, who you are, where to go to be able to action to that consumer. And it's one of those smaller things that, historically we've seen a lot of brands will come in with these great videos, but the end card maybe just shows a logo and a URL with no audio. So reinforcing in that way is one of the easiest ways to really ensure that we're going to hit home on what we want that consumer to do and where they should be going when it comes to Google or searching afterwards.
Yeah. Such a good point. I think, like you said, the key thing here is really capitalizing on all of the value that this placement can drive. Because it is television, you have the benefits of audio, visual, text, movement. So you might as well tap into every single option there to drive an outcome or an action. If you could make a billboard talk to people as it was driving by, you do it, right? So it's the same concept here. You want to make sure that you're engaging with the user and capturing their attention as much as possible.
Right. The other thing I would say to note too, these items here in this kind of rubric can also be used to help you understand how you should be thinking about the information you convey to a production partner when you're providing that high level idea that you're looking for, or you're looking to create. And, at QuickFrame, we have makers in our network who can action on just a very high level idea. But if you are really clear on the following things here, or maybe say the branding, the value prop, CTA, the makers can then transform that into a fleshed out concept and script. But these are another way that you can think about how to translate that search data into actual elements for production.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Al. So one story that we'd like to share specifically of a brand and a partner of ours who's done it really well is National University. They're a great example of a brand that had, one, a lot of existing digital expertise, and they've really locked in their search and social strategy. But CTV was a newer opportunity, or a channel they hadn't really explored fully. So when they came to test Mountain, they were actually a partner of mine back in the day specifically. They were really exploring the channel for the very first time, much like a lot of you might be doing. And so they cared very much about testing this channel and making sure that it was driving not only awareness, but a down funnel conversion, right? Someone actually submitting a lead form or applying for programs. So they cared very much about the performance and the measurement, as well as the storytelling that CTV would do for their brand. So really, again, kind of looking at both angles, the storytelling and the performance. And so they actually opted into our creative as a subscription model, which allows you to combine your media buy with creative production. You're bundling it so that all of your dollars are going towards working media instead of having to pay outright for the creative. Big perk, and something that we were all very excited between Mountain and QuickFrame to bring to market. And so with that, they were able to get on a regular basis, quarterly basis, new creative assets made for CTV, tailored to the different audiences that they wanted to test, the different programs they wanted to really focus on for their university, right? Whether it was a big nursing focus or a STEM focus, that they had different stories and goals tied to different programs. And so being able to test and create new assets on a regular basis was really important to them, to laser focus on who they were speaking to and what they wanted to showcase. And so with that, by introducing more creative variation and more audience targeting, they saw a huge lift in their CTV performance. Their conversion rates for their campaigns more than doubled, as you can see here. Their actual cost per acquisition or per lead went down drastically. And that all came from really months and months of refining their strategy, testing new assets, adjusting to what worked best, and then testing a new iteration from there. And ultimately, it even down to the performance in Google Analytics, they were able to see that in many cases, we were actually outperforming some of their other social initiatives and campaigns. So it just really speaks to, I think, the power of connected television and the results that it can drive. And in particular, how that really good storytelling contributes to that. I think it's been a really cool run and journey with them. And that's the type of success that we really want all brands to see when they're testing connected television. There's just so much opportunity for that. So that's I think a great use case and example of how to do it well and really maximize the value of the channel. So as we reflect back on today's session, a few key takeaways. I think both something Alex and I noted was that, again, as search marketers, you and they already have a lot of the tools needed to be successful on CTV. At the very least, these are great starting points to inform what that creative should really focus on, and how to target your CTV campaigns effectively. And that overall, it's kind of a rising tide raises all ships situation. You test CTV, and now all of a sudden your other efforts have that lift as well. We also touched on, again, video not needing to be a barrier for you to test, and that there are cost-effective, very budget-friendly and quick solutions to get new CTV assets in market. And that's obviously a really key component here of testing and getting up and running. And then the other kind of final point is just that it really can be very easy to launch and test video assets in a way that helps you optimize your campaigns overall and your creative strategy overall. Compared to maybe, let's say, linear television or TV in the past, The benefit of CTV is you do have more real-time data to optimize from. So it's a lot more akin to a paid search or social strategy, what part of what makes it very powerful and able to optimize as effectively as it is. So with that, I think that brings us to our conclusion today, and we're very happy that you took some time to be with us, and thank you for joining us in this session with SMX and Mountain.
Thank you for watching. Click the agenda link at the top of your screen to choose your next session.